I am Jamie Eckott, and my passion for cars started when I was very young. All of my earliest memories are car related, you know.
Hi, I'm Peanut from the Kaiser Chiefs, and I drive a Tesla Model X.
My name's Don Brown. I've had passion for cars about 4 years, if I remember rightly.
My name's Martin Dakin. I've had a passion for cars since I was 6 years old. I'm now 43, so it's been a lifelong passion.
This is something we've done for many years, and car enthusiasts of generations before us have done for many years. So this is a very small gathering of friends.
And because we all share an interest in cars, you may as well just bring the cars, play around a little bit. Nothing too dangerous. It's a bit wet, cold and icy. Just, you know, have a chat without sitting behind a computer screen while also doing something else we all enjoy. It's a common interest, so it just makes sense.
Petrol has been in my blood since I was very young, and I think it will stay there for a long time. I mean, if you said to me, you know, this EV that you really like, this petrol car that you really like, it's not really a competition for me. Like the petrol car has such a more emotional connection for me, and I think that way will stay for as long as possible.
So the reason I'm into cars, because I've always worked on them, even when I wasn't interested, because my dad would make me work on them with him, sort of thing we'd do the weekend, save a bit of money, plus always like doing stuff ourselves. And then from there it just sort of grew, sort of interested in a couple of my mates' cars when they got some. They took me out to some car meets and I started looking around. I thought, this isn't a bad idea. So then I started working way up, got this car, started working on it while I was driving another car, and then it just grew from there.
I own a restaurant in Derby called Hyde Burger Bar and Bistro. Come down, you'll love it. And I have a massive, massive problem with vehicles. So I've owned quite a few cars in the past, I'd say at least 40 cars. I do get bored quite easily, and there's always something better that you can get your hands on. So I do swap a car no less than a year, but it's usually 3 to 6 months. So I get my fun out of it, get to know the vehicle and try and find its ups and downs really, the positives and negatives, and then go on and look for something else.
What do I do for a living? Good question. I'm in Kaiser Chiefs, so we make records, tour around the world, playing concerts. And I run a recording studio here in Leeds called The Nave. I also have a little photo developing business called Take It Easy Lab, where we develop analog film. So I think, yeah, that seems to be like, it makes me quite a techie person, doesn't it really, yeah? Yeah. A car in generally is an A to B thing for, I think, for most people. I was never like a petrol head growing up, or kind of, you know, like I had friends who were into, you know, getting souped up little Vauxhall Novas or things like that, and little Fiestas and things. That never really appealed to me much. But I think now that electric vehicles have like so much technology in them as well, I think that's what appeals to me more about them, as opposed to just a fast petrol car, you know?
During lockdown there was a lot of fuel shortages, so really for me it was kind of like, how I'm going to go away from that problem. And electric vehicles seemed that, you know, I could charge from home, not have to worry about filling up at a petrol station, queuing up if there was a shortage. So I changed over right at that point, and then electricity started going up in cost as well. So that was a short-lived vehicle ownership as well.
I chose petrol or diesel because the main thing for me was the purchasing price. I mean, you know, my Fiesta was 800 quid, and where is an EV for that money?
I paid £1,500 for this car, and I will not buy an electric car for that price. There's no chance of anything close, unless it's got some serious damage, which I'm not willing to fix anyway.
The majority of British people will always buy, you know, a banger or a cheap runaround car for their first car, because, you know, not many people go for new cars, and I think that is something that is going to carry on long past the internal combustion engine sale ban.
Cars last a long time. We haven't reached that window yet in EVs where there's 10-year-old Teslas, well, not many 10-year-old Teslas, you know, which will still get sold for a fraction of the price of a new one. So I think that time will come, you know, that time is coming, but we're just not there yet.
So the pros of owning a Tesla was that if it was a cold morning, you'd wake up in the morning, get on your app on your phone, you could turn all the heating on, the heated seats, the windows would be clear in the morning, and the quietness of driving along, being on the telephone on hands-free, you could have a really comfortable telephone call.
Yeah, I think owning an electric vehicle and driving one for nearly 4 years now, then it's kind of like you get back in a petrol car and you're like, it's noisy. It's noisy, it's kind of slow to accelerate.
I think the biggest thing I miss about owning an electric vehicle is that the amount of torque from the electric motors, and the 0 to 60 again, it's incredible. So the Porsches now are doing like 2.3 seconds 0 to 60.
Anyone who comes as a passenger in the car, you put your foot down and they're like, whoa, it's like on a fairground ride or something, you know, like a roller coaster, because it just accelerates like no petrol car I've ever driven. I've been lucky to drive some pretty sporty sort of V8 cars. It's just not the same.
The main envy point I'd have with an electric car would be how cheap it is to fill them up. But on the downside of that is how frequently you got to fill them up, how long that takes. Over one of these takes me 20 seconds to put fuel in it.
I can't really waste 40 minutes in the morning before I go to work waiting to charge the vehicle and thinking that on the opposite side of why I chose that car in the first place, I can go to a petrol station, I can get a full tank of fuel in less than 5 minutes of getting there, filling it up, paying and leaving. It was just not time-wise viable for me to carry on doing that.
And I'm glad that I went with Tesla, because what I've learned in the 4 years since owning one is that it's all about charging and range. Doesn't really matter about the features. Even though I like the features in the car, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the interior is like. The big thing is kind of like, can I get there on one charge or 2 charges? Can I work it out? And the fact that I have this crazy fast network of chargers, if you just drive around the city, it's fine. But if you want to go from Leeds to London or something, or down to Cornwall or something like that, you have to you look at the app, it's got a little plan, you could work out where to go, because you can't get there on one charge. So that was kind of the reason that I went with Tesla, was kind of like I needed to know that I could go on long journeys, and like, well, even you see a bit of our studio here, I buy and sell music gear all the time, you know, and kind of like I'll drive down to Bournemouth to collect a synth or something, you know, like it's like a 500-mile round trip, you know. So I needed something that I knew that I could at least have a little stop, have a little rest, whatever, you know, go get a sandwich, and the car charges super fast.
You'd go to a charging point, the charging point would be broken, you'd have to go from one place to another to another. If you were lucky, you would get a charge, but then you've spent probably 40 minutes looking for a charger. Then if you got to be at a meeting or be at work, it was quite a pain, because I couldn't have a charging point at my house. I had to have one wired into my girlfriend's house, so it was only when I was at my girlfriend's I could charge it from home.
I do think that petrol and diesel cars have a future, and I think they have a future place in this country. Maybe not, you know, kind of 50 years, but in the next kind of 20, 30, I really do think so. And I don't think that EVs are the answer. I think EVs are one part of a multifaceted solution, and I think it will take a long time to fully replace society, in particular agriculture and transport's reliance on fossil fuels.
They probably don't have a future. I've spoken to my dad about this. I said, he'll be gone in the ground, I'll be 60 with grandkids, and I'll still have this hidden away with a spare engine ready to go for the day, let's go, because I won't get rid of a petrol car. But they will be going, unfortunately. That's just the way it will be, which I don't fully agree with, because you're losing a culture. You're losing car enthusiasm.
In terms of, for my heart, as long as I can own an ICE car realistically, I think I will. And I think especially the longer I can own a real enthusiast petrol car, then that is something that I'll continue to do.
You still have to have it at home. You'll put it on your trailer, whatever, take it to your track day. But I think what it'll be like, the track day will be taxed. There'll be it'll cost you more than it does at the moment to go to a track day. But that's okay. It's a hobby sort of thing, you know. And then that's totally fine. And I think, like, you could look at, like, in my studio, here's a load of keyboards from last year, but most of it's from 20, 30 years ago. I'm still enthusiastic about it. I use that stuff, we look after it, it costs money to look after it, and like you get the spare parts for it still. And so the same thing with the petrol heads, you know, it's a hobby rather than a mode of transport. So yeah, you could still have your sporty car, you could have your kit car, whatever, all these kind of things that you would see on the track days and racetracks. You just might not be able to drive it to the racetrack, you might just have to get your trailer, or you pay a fee to, you know, there'll be all kinds of schemes and stuff.
I think I would consider going back to an electric vehicle if the infrastructure was there with the charging points, and depending on what the cost of energy is at that point as well. You
feel like you'd sort of taken the right step forward, in where the world is going. You feel like you're at least on that path. And I'm only one very small part of that, you know, that kind of solution, if you want, to the sort of the fossil fuel problem.